It was a hot day in Fresno, California, and it was my day off, so my wife and I decided to go fishing at Shaver Lake. As I step out of a small parking lot, the heat wave flashes in my face. As we pack our stuff out of the car and prepare our fishing gear, after setting up my fishing pole, I hop in the water to cool myself down. My wife threw her fishing line at a different part of the side. While swimming to the deeper part, I heard a woman calling my name. As I wiped my eyes from the lake water, I saw a woman 20 feet away from me. She was also swimming. It scares me a bit because before jumping in the water, no one was around me or the water. I looked around and noticed she was smiling at me, and I nodded and smiled back. I realized she is very beautiful with long hair. She asks me for my name, and I reply back that my name is Tua. She introduced herself as C. I look around and can see my wife walking towards me, so I'm afraid she might misunderstand the lady in me. As I swam back to the side and got out of the water, I turned around and looked back to where I and the beautiful woman were swimming, but she was nowhere to be seen. I was frozen and dumbfounded. My wife got up to me and asked what was wrong, but somehow something made me lie to my wife, and I didn't tell her what just happened in the water. I think of nothing, but I just thought that she might swim out too. As the day goes on and it starts to get dark, we pack our stuff into the car. I started the engine to drive off, and right when we were about to exit the gate, I saw her again. She was wearing a beautiful red dress with red lipstick. She smiled and waved directly at me. Somehow my wife, sitting in the passenger seat, didn't see her. As we got home, I started to have a feeling of missing her. Thinking back, it's like some kind of magic that makes me fall in love. As the day goes on, something inside me just misses her so much that it starts to hurt so deeply inside of me. One day I couldn't hold it anymore and decided to go to the lake alone and hope to see her again. As I got to the lake and stepped out of the car, I felt a cold breeze blowing on my face. I was confused because it was so hot outside at 105 degrees. Thinking nothing, I walked to the spot where I saw her swimming. I didn't see her anywhere and was starting to feel sad. I decided to lay near the water with a little shade covering me. All I remember is that I had already knocked out sleeping, but something woke me up. It was a water splash on me as I got up and looked around. I heard a woman say, "I knew you'd come back." I look in the water and see the same beautiful smile. My tiredness went away as I asked her where her husband was, and she said that she doesn't have a husband. I was very happy to hear that she was single. As she walks out of the water toward me, I see that she has the most beautiful body ever. Me and her sat down on the rock and talked. I realized everything around us was so quiet, no birds or people, as if we were the only ones alive in this world. She asked me to be her boyfriend, and I gladly accepted and forgot that I'm a married man. We walk around and kiss. We also make love behind trees and bushes. I asked her where she lived, and she told me that she's also from Fresno. As it was getting dark, I asked her if I could walk her to her car, and she refused and said that I should leave first. I went to my car and noticed it was the only one in the parking lot right now. I didn't see her car park anywhere because the parking lot was pretty small. I grabbed my flashlight and ran into the darkness to look for her, and she was gone. Nowhere to be seen. I quickly ran back to my car and drove home. Somehow, I kept her a secret and haven't told anyone about that lady. A week later, my cousin and I had a gathering at their house. Some of my cousin's friends came over, and we all started talking about fishing at Shaver Lake. Then one of my cousin's friends said that back in 1998, her sister died at the same spot I went to fish there. She slipped and didn't know how to swim or drown. No one was around her because everybody was fishing in different parts of the spot. I was curious and asked if he had a picture of his sister. He grabbed his phone out of his pocket, and when he showed me the picture, to my horror, I was about to throw up. It was the girl that I saw at the lake, and I have been seeing her. I was shaking and stood up to go to the restroom. I'm starting to feel like I'm sick or something, thinking about her beautiful smile and knowing she is not human. I have been seeing a ghost. Weeks after weeks, I started to get ill, and my doctor said that I was in perfect health. I feel very weak and always sleep in bed. This one night, I dreamed of her, and she apologizes for not telling me that she is not human. Her face is full of sadness and tears. I told her in my dream that I would forgive her, and she said that only if we meet when she is still alive will she be so happy to be with me. She said that she let me go and wouldn't bother me anymore. After that day of the dream, I started to get better and stronger. Ever since then, I have not gone fishing again. As I drove toward the freeway entrance, the road was dark and quiet. That's when I saw her, a Hmong woman dressed in traditional clothing, standing alone at the roadside. My heart raced. Who would be out here wearing such attire this late? I slowed down, curiosity igniting a sense of caution within me. She looked ethereal, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders like a dark waterfall. Yet something was off. She seemed to be staring right through me, her expression unreadable. Despite the unease curling in my stomach, I felt an urge to help her. With a hesitant breath, I pulled over. She approached my window, her movements graceful and deliberate. "Can you take me home?" she asked softly, pointing in a direction I had never traveled. There was an air of desperation mixed with serenity about her that compelled me to comply. I nodded, and she slipped into the passenger seat, her presence filling the car with an unexpected calm. As I drove, the darkness enveloped us, and she gave me vague directions, her voice barely above a whisper. I noticed her gaze was often lost in the night, as if she were seeing things beyond the road ahead. After what felt like an eternity of winding through unfamiliar streets, we finally arrived at a modest house. She turned to me, her eyes gleaming with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, and as I glanced back at the house, a sense of completion washed over me. After she waved goodbye and I drove off, the weight of the encounter lingered in my mind. Who was she? Why was she alone in the dark? The next day, as my brother and I prepared for our trip to Fresno for the new year, I stumbled upon an old flip phone wedged between the seats. My heart raced. It had to be hers. I felt an odd mix of guilt and obligation. I needed to return it, to bridge the gap between our worlds. The drive to the house felt heavier than before. Memories of her face haunted me, her quiet demeanor echoing through my thoughts. When I finally arrived, I knocked hesitantly on the door. An older woman opened it, her features lined with time but her eyes still sharp. I explained the situation, holding up the flip phone, hoping for a sign of recognition. To my shock, the woman's expression shifted. "I don't have a daughter," she said softly, yet her eyes glistened with unshed tears. My heart sank further as she continued, her voice trembling. "But I once had a daughter. She died in a car crash back in 2001. The words hung heavy in the air, suffocating my sense of reality. I felt a chill creep down my spine as I processed her revelation. "We've been looking for her phone since that night," the woman added, her gaze distant. "It was lost in the chaos. We never found it." My mind raced. Had I picked up a spirit? Had my kindness unearthed an unresolved tragedy? The flip phone felt heavier in my hand, a tangible connection to a past that haunted this family. The silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and lingering sorrow. I handed the phone over, a bridge of understanding forming between our grief. The older woman's hands shook as she accepted it, her eyes reflecting a world of loss and longing. I could see that in some way the phone held memories she had yet to fully let go of. "Thank you for bringing this back," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. I nodded, feeling an overwhelming wave of empathy wash over me. In that moment, I understood the weight of my encounter with the young woman. It was a connection that transcended time, pulling together threads of love and loss in a way I could scarcely comprehend. As I left the house, the reality of my night began to settle in. I had encountered more than a lost soul. I had witnessed a fragment of a family's history, one that would forever linger in the shadows of my memory. The freeway beckoned, but the ethereal presence of the Hmong woman stayed with me, a reminder that some stories never truly end. They simply wait for someone to listen. It was a night filled with stars when we made our blood promise. My boyfriend Koa and I took a small blade and cut our palms, letting the crimson droplets mingle. We swore to love each other forever, our hearts bound by a bond that felt unbreakable. But then, life took a cruel turn. Koa fell ill, and despite the prayers and hope, he slipped away, leaving me shattered. The days turned into a blur of grief, but the worst was yet to come. Late one evening as I drove home from work, I caught a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, Koa, looking just as he did before he got sick. My heart raced. I could hardly breathe, convinced my eyes were playing tricks. But every night after that, he appeared, watching me from the shadows, his eyes full of longing. I could feel his presence, hear his whispers in the wind, telling me he was coming back for me. The dreams were even worse. I would wake up drenched in sweat, his voice echoing in my mind, promising me he was waiting, that soon we would be together again. "I'll come for you," he would say softly. The line between reality and the spirit world blurred until I couldn't tell if I was awake or trapped in a waking nightmare. Desperate, I knew I had to do something. I contacted a shaman, hoping he could help me understand what was happening. Together, we entered a sacred space, filled with smoke and the soft drumming of the earth. I could feel Koa's energy all around us, heavy with longing and sadness. The shaman called upon the spirits, seeking answers. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke softly, his voice steady but heavy with sorrow. "Your love is strong, but the bond you forged is tethering his spirit to this world. He cannot fully rest." With that, the shaman entered a trance, channeling Koa's spirit. I felt a rush of emotions: love, pain, and an overwhelming sorrow. Finally, Koa spoke through the shaman, his voice filled with regret. "I never wanted to leave you, but my time here is over. I have to go." Tears streamed down my face as Koa continued. "Tell her I will always love her. She must live and find peace. My spirit will always watch over her, but I cannot stay." His words pierced my heart like a knife, each syllable heavy with the weight of our love. As the ritual ended, the shaman turned to me. "He has given you his blessing to move on, but you must let him go. Hold him in your heart, but do not anchor him to this world." With one last glance, I could feel Koa's presence fading, leaving a bittersweet ache in my heart. I understood then that love transcends even death, but sometimes love means letting go. As the shaman's words echoed in my mind, I whispered a final goodbye to the love of my life, knowing I would carry him with me always, but I could finally start to heal.